Section 2 of Warriors of Old Japan and Other Stories by Yei Theodora Ozaki. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Madame Yukio Ozaki, A Biographical Sketch by Mrs. Hugh Fraser, Part 2. She met him at last. In 1904, she made the acquaintance of Yukio Ozaki, the mayor of Tokyo. Each had long known of the other, and various amusing complications had occurred through mistakes of the postman, who, owing to identity of name, there was no connection of family, sometimes got hopelessly confused, and delivered the mayor's letters to the young lady, and the young lady's correspondence to the mayor. From the moment when the two first met at a big dinner party and laughed together over the postman's mistakes, the result was a foregone conclusion. Mr. Ozaki had already learned all that his friends could tell him about the intellectual, attractive girl whose independent, resolute spirit had in no way marred her gentle womanliness. She knew him equally well by reputation, and to hear of Yukio Ozaki in Japan is to admire and respect him. Many were the parents, both wealthy and noble, who, after his first wife's death, would gladly have had him for a son-in-law. His irreproachable morals and elevated character earned for him during this period the title Nihon no Daiichi no Musuko-san, the first, best bridegroom in all Japan. But he too nursed an ideal, and was not to be drawn into new ties until he had found it. Given to such beings, it needed but one kindly touch of fate's wand to bring them together. The result was a marriage happy in its perfect romance and blessed with the deep sympathy of tastes and interests which forms the surest foundation for married felicity. I returned to Japan a few weeks before the wedding took place, and counted myself fortunate in gaining the friendship of Yukio Ozaki. My first impressions of him could be summed up in a very few words: strength, calmness, largeness of heart. The fearless glance of his eyes, the noble carriage of his fine dark head, the quiet voice, and direct yet eloquent speech, all this was the fitting index to a character which, through many long years of public stress and strain, has never let even a passing shadow flit over its crystal sincerity and loyalty. Political corruption, temptations of personal ambition, lures of advancement, popular feeling, the outcries of opponents, and the applause of adherents, all these have assailed him in vain, have fallen like broken arrows from the shield of his spotless integrity. A Japanese writer says of him, "Mr. Yukio Ozaki has had a wonderful political career. He is a born orator, the most powerful debater, and the ablest writer in Japan, a staunch fighter for the cause of liberty and the interests of the people, one of the political magnates, and a potent factor in the introduction of the Meiji civilization. A man who is above every form of political corruption, once the Minister for Education, and now the highly renowned Mayor of Tokyo, who has never missed a single election for the 25 sessions of the Diet of Japan. Mr. Ozaki is a strenuous and untiring worker. In his character of mayor, no detail is too small for him to go into patiently. Drainage, street cleaning, water supply, market regulations, everything that can conduce to the health and morals of the city passes under his watchful eyes, and Tokyo is governed marvelously well. His scrupulous conscientiousness leads him to take upon himself 1,000 minutiae which another man would hand over to his subordinates. I shall never forget the searching orders that were promulgated to prepare the capital for the return of the troops from Manchuria. Hundreds of thousands of men, war-worn and ragged, with all their invalids, were to be arriving for months together, and no one could tell what germs of disease might come with them. So, before the first detachment reached Shimbashi, a house-to-house visitation was made. The most thorough cleaning and clearing away of rubbish was insisted upon, and the entire foundations of the dwellings, as well as outhouses and gateways, were copiously sprinkled with chloride of lime. Tokyo sneezed, Tokyo wept, but Tokyo had no epidemics. Besides all his responsibilities as mayor, a post which he has filled for 7 years, Mr. Ozaki has great political duties to occupy his time. He has steadily refused to attach himself to any party in particular, and though he has many supporters in the Diet, is an absolutely independent statesman, judging all measures from his only standpoints, right and wrong, and the best interests of the country. This uncompromising attitude has made many enemies for him, but even they admire and respect him, knowing that he is a man who has said to evil, "Stand thou on that side, for on this am I." There is another side to his character, the love of all that is beautiful and inspiring. No one who saw the triumphal return of Admiral Togo can forget the splendid scene of that imposing ceremony, attended by 500,000 people, and so deftly organized that all could see the hero and the man who welcomed him in the country's name. The welcome came from the nation's heart, and found adequate expression in Yukio Ozaki's magnificent address, delivered in the voice whose clear tones had ever sounded in the cause of true patriotism. The thrill of deepest feeling was in them that day, and I, who stood near the speaker, saw that his hand trembled and his eyes were suffused with emotion as he welcomed the beloved old sailor back in glory to the country he had saved. One more superb pageant, one where Yukio Ozaki and his bride were host and hostess, returns to my memory, the fete given to Prince Arthur of Connaught in 1906. This was the largest social reunion that has ever taken place in the East, and most regally was the illustrious visitor entertained. In the beautifully wooded park, a banqueting pavilion had been erected in the purest style of ancient Japanese architecture, severely harmonious in outline and detail. The interior contained, among other decorations, a great collection of rare Japanese flowers, shrubs, and dwarf trees, pines and maples hundreds of years old, and, from hoary trunk to new-born feathery branch tip, perfect miniatures of their spreading, towering brethren of the forest. The crowning feature of the day was the daimyo's procession, a mile long, which defiled before our eyes across the great lawns in the open air. For this the last survivors of the feudal epoch had been sought out and brought in from every part of Japan. Old samurai who had accompanied their imperious masters in many a famous progress, and had cut down all and any who had the temerity to cross their path. In joyful arrogance they came to show a degenerate world the martial splendors of their younger days, and the sight was enough to make one overlook the wrongs and dangers of the dead time, and only regret that so much color and fire had to be swept away to make room for the nation's new life. For things like these, all art lovers are grateful to Yukio Ozaki, but his 2 or 3 intimate friends have more exquisite moments to thank him for. "Let me take you to my favorite garden," he said one day when I was with him and his wife, "the garden of the 7 flowers of autumn." The sun was setting as we drove for miles beside the river bank. Leaving the city far behind, we came through leafy lanes to a half-hidden gate through which we passed into a dreamland of misty beauty, all shadowy and subdued in the late October twilight. Great pale moonflowers swung, like scarce-lit lamps, from tree and trellis. Feathery autumn grasses waved their plumes below. The dark velvety paths led to dim monuments on whose grey stones we could feel rather than read the deep-cut characters of classic poems. All was imbued with a tender melancholy which brings repose, not pain, and even now, in hours of stress and weariness, my memory turns to the starlit peace that reigns on nights in the spirit-haunted Garden of the Seven Flowers of Autumn. Things like these mean more to Yukio Ozaki and his wife than all the social and public side of their existence. Both have the proud, delicate reserves of the aristocrat of mind and soul, and escape, whenever they can, from the publicity which has been forced upon them. It required much persuasion to obtain their permission for this sketch to be published. Madame Ozaki's last words on the subject were, "It is true that my life is varied and exceedingly interesting. One night I may dine at a state banquet with cabinet ministers and foreign ambassadors, or with distinguished visitors like Mr. and Mrs. Taft, who recently visited this country. The next will find me with a purely Japanese party at the Maple Club. I assist at the court functions, the imperial wedding receptions. I act as a sponsor or go-between at Japanese marriage ceremonies. I see all the ins and outs of Japanese life. I seem to live in the heart of two distinct civilizations, those of the East and the West. But the East is my spirit's fatherland. My mind still turns for companionship to the great ones of the past, the heroines of my country's history. I find greater pleasure in the old classical drama of the No, with its Buddhist teachings and ideals, its human tragedies of chivalry and of sorrow, than in all the sensational and spectacular modern drama. But my greatest happiness is in my home life, in the companionship of my baby daughter, in the few short hours that my husband can snatch from his work to devote to me. If you must write about us, tell people about Yukio. He is so good and great. I have no wish to be mentioned apart from him." Mary Crawford Fraser. Note: Mr. Ozaki's collected works have just been published in Japan. They include many essays on public and literary topics, original poems, and a translation into Japanese of the life of Lord Beaconsfield. Madame Ozaki's writings include The Shinto Fire Walking, The Hot Water Ordeal, Nikko Festival, Singing Insects of Japan, and many articles on travel and folklore. The Japanese Fairy Book, Japanese in Time of War, Japanese Peeresses in Tableau, Stories of Japanese Heroines, Buddha's Crystal in 1908, and Japanese Girls' Home Accomplishments in 1909. End of section 2.